You ready to get started?
We'll start since we have a second session. Let's do roll call. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher. She's raising her thumb that she's here. Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
And Commissioner Fisher, Commissioner Schrader is calling in right now. She's still on mute. Commissioner Schrader.
Hello, guys. This is Commissioner Schrader. I'm calling in because I'm still unable to get a Zoom connection that's consistent. So.
Got it. All right.
That might be worse than the computer.
Nope. It must be the carrier. So.
There it goes. That's better. That's better. All right. All commissioners are present. We have several policy sessions today, commissioners, all related to fee or fine approval, which is required to get your feedback before departments prepare their budgets. So first we'll start today with county park fees and fine schedule changes for fiscal year 2020-2021. We have the team from Business and Community Services, the County Parks Division, to present. Laura Zentner, the director, Rick Gruen, and Sarah Eckman. So Laura, please go ahead.
Actually, I will just turn it over to Sarah and Rick to take it away.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Administrator Schmidt, County Commissioners, good afternoon, and thank you for having us for this session. I'm going to turn it over to Rick Gruen, our Parks Manager. He has done extensive research. His team has put together a very thorough investigation of other fees and fines in similar jurisdictions to ours around parks, fines, and fees, and has put together a very detailed recommendation for our actions going forward. So Rick, please.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Commissioners. Gary, good to see you. Each year, we, County Parks, try to do an analysis and understanding of where we're at in the region. To ensure fairness and equity, we did a survey. We included about 66 different park providers throughout the region within a 50 or so mile radius. These included other county park providers, metro, private, state, and federal. It's real hard necessarily to look at apples without really understanding the different types of amenities that County Parks offers. So what we tried to do was look at where the region was, where the market demand was, and where we're at as a fee provider. I think the important thing to understand is, as you're all aware, very little of our money comes from the general fund, so we have to be dependent on park user fees. We're also very proud that the annual survey that we do with PGA, the public has responded very well since we started surveying with MFR, that the public has come to recognize our parks as being clean and safe. We routinely get in the upper 80s to low 90s as survey results for how clean our parks are, how safe the folks feel that use our parks. But to keep them clean and safe, to keep up with increasing costs for providing these services, it's also necessary to look at our park fees. So in the analysis that we did along with Tom Riggs, who is my park operations supervisor, what we tried to look at is fee recovery relative to the market and pricing with minimum wage increases going up every year. In order to recover costs, we employ generally each summer. This summer, obviously an exception probably. We have to bring on about 31 seasonal employees. Now our ranges in annual hourly wages have gone up from several years ago, $12 to $13 an hour, to be competitive in the market this year. When we went out for recruitment working with HR, we're now in the $15 to $17 an hour range just to attract people to come into our parks. We compete not only with NCPRD and their seasonals, we compete with the road department for their seasonal folks. So this increase in fee wages is about 10 to 12%. We're also very critical, working with Laura and Sarah at Capital Repair Replace. We've done very well over the years in trying to make up that backlog of deferred maintenance in the parks. We've done a reasonably good job, probably a very good job. But what we're trying to do also is to look at deferred maintenance avoidance by making sure we can recover fees just to keep up with the operation and maintenance costs of the parks. So when we did the complete fee analysis, we feel very confident that we can remain competitive in the market with a more or less across the board 20% increase in fees. This would include our camping fees, which would go up from $26 to $34. Our more primitive camping from $22 to $26. We looked at parking fees at $6 and are recommending an $8 in the peak season weekends as keeping $6 throughout the rest of the year. And then we did a very extensive analysis of our picnic shelters and picnic grounds. And those pricing vary across the board. But when we looked at the 20%, it would allow us to recover 10% offset to the minimum wage rates that we pay, and 10% going to offset the increased costs of operations and maintenance. So the combined effort of the fee increases across the board would return about an additional $100,000 to county parks. 50,000 of that is more or less an offset to the wages increased, and 50% we would put away and use towards repairs and maintenance. Any questions to this point? The other thing that we want to bring to the board's attention is when we initially started working on this over the winter time, thinking about rolling these rates into the coming park season. Talking with Sarah and Laura, we also felt that given that we're in the COVID pandemic crisis, that it wouldn't be reasonable or necessary to implement those wages or those fee increases for this coming season, that they would go into effect if the board approved for the 2021 season. However, we do need to get these approved because what happens is come May 1, our policy for parks is to book reservations a year in advance. So we would have to get these, if you are inclined to approve, get these adopted as soon as reasonably that we can. Those rates would be put into our reservation system for implementation as people start reserving come May for next season. So we would stay status quo. You know, we don't even know yet if we can open our parks this season. But for next season, when we're back operational, these fees would then be effective as soon as goes through the process through subsequent board meetings and the public hearings that we have to go through for various increases. Along with that, we also looked at fines. I think I remember the last time we were meeting with the board and talking about fees and fines. Maybe it was in 2018. I know Commissioner Fisher was very opinionated that our fines were way too low. I don't know if you remember that, Commissioner Fisher, but you leaned over and says, get those up there. So we also did a comprehensive analysis of where our fines were. Now, remembering that we, as a county parks, don't receive any of the fine income, that all goes to the sheriff's office for administration. which includes processing all the fines, collecting any hearings before the hearings officer is all covered by the fines that are collected. But again, hearkening back to Commissioner Fisher's words, it was more about being a deterrent. And the majority of our fines predominantly are failure to pay or failure to properly display, illegal parking. We put together kind of a revised schedule of fines. The typical fine for failure to pay or failure to properly display is currently at $40. Here we're proposing a fine increase to $80. And I think in your packet you have a breakdown of the fine schedule. Tom did a fantastic job organizing our fine schedules and color-coded those. I think they're in your packet. What we really wanted to do and to really help the deputies that are working in our parks or our private security officers, we kind of identified 4 categories of fines. And in your color coding, the lowest level of fines, what we're calling the violation of administrative park rules. These are things that you should know that you have to pay to come into the park. Minor violations, but nonetheless, they are violations. These we're referencing as administrative park rule violations, and they would all be $80. I think if you recall from past years, we have so many variabilities of citations and violations that now we're proposing to categorize them into these 4 categories. The next one is bad behavior violations, where people should know better. These now would be $115. Then we have some county areas of emphasis fines, which are like the public drinking in the parks. These are $150. And then we have what we consider the dangerous or destructive fines. These are, speeding type violations, things that could cause serious harm or injury. So the way we've categorized it now, rather than, maybe 20 different fine amounts, there are now 4 separate distinct fine levels based on severity and impact. So we're proposing to the board, we hope that you would recommend these fine or approve these fine increases. And then lastly, while we're here today talking about fees and fines, there are 2 code amendments that relate back to fees. One in particular, we have been charging a $5 lost pass replacement processing fee. After talking to a number of different park providers, what we're proposing is to eliminate the $5 cost of replacing a lost pass, really treating it as currency, that if you lose your pass, you need to buy a new pass. The amount of information that we had to collect in order to document who held a pass, what their email address, physical mailing address, there was a lot of paperwork involved. We maybe roughly process about 6 lost passes a season. Doesn't seem like a lot, but from an administrative standpoint, collecting information on every park pass holder, and our park passes are getting more and more popular, to keep and retain that information is pretty overwhelming from an administration standpoint. So if we simply eliminate the $5 lost pass fee and just treat it as tender, that if you lose a pass, you just have to buy a new pass. And then the second code amendment that we're bringing forward has to do when somebody makes a reservation. Let's say Commissioner Fisher makes a reservation. Our policy allows you to stay in the park for 14 days. You have to be out for 4 days, and then you can come back for another 14, not to exceed 28 days. What was happening, we were getting people tagging onto existing people's reservations, so that maybe 4 days into Commissioner Fisher's stay, Commissioner Savas wanted to join Commissioner Fisher's and kind of jumped onto her reservation, and then you extended out for 14 days while Commissioner Fisher stayed on and could stay in the park then for more than the 14 days. So what we're proposing is that we really tie any additional reservation joiner back to the original reservation so that it would hold up to just that 14-day stay. So in this case, if Commissioner Savas joined Commissioner Fisher 4 days into it, you would only be able to stay, Commissioner Savas, for another 10 days under Commissioner Fisher's existing reservation, because it tags back to the original reservation. You would then have to go off and book your own reservation, and our Kamava system could track that. It's more or less a loophole in the system that we're just trying to address and correct, so we don't get these extended stays that go against the spirit of our short-term stay recreation policy. So those are the extent and summary of our fee and fine recommendations. Any questions?
Chair Bernard, we have Commissioner Humbertson, then Commissioner Savas.
Ken?
First question is, when you are delaying this till 2021, you saying July 1 of 2021 or January 1st, 2021?
I'm sorry, yeah, good point, Commissioner. It would be as close to May 1, 2021 as possible.
Okay, I got you.
So whatever date the board would approve and we go through the process for adoption through the public hearings, as soon, it would be a year from that date.
Okay, and second question on, I have no problem with the fees. On the fines, I was wondering why you wouldn't go ahead and adopt the fines immediately.
Well, we are certainly open to that, and yes, we would love to. Again, it would be the discretion of the board, and we have to work through with county council. I think we're understanding that there's two different pathways. Fees go one way and fines go another way in order to get adopted. To the soonest that we can get these adopted, we're all supportive of fines adopting immediately, as quick as the process allows.
It just seems to me that's addressing bad behavior, and so I don't have a problem with addressing that fairly immediately. With respect to the fees for entrance and use and all that sort of thing, I respect your viewpoint that we should maybe delay that for a season just because of the economic situation that we find ourselves in.
And just for clarity, Commissioner, while the fees would be effective a year out, we would have to adopt them like as soon as we can through the process in 2020, so
yes,
that when they book ahead a year out, they're in our system for then, but not for now.
Oh,
okay.
Mike,
Nope.
you shut the camera off.
I had
There you go.
a message across the top, and it blocked the whole menu on the top of the deal. I can't wait for my new device. So a couple questions. You mentioned earlier on the $100,000 of new revenue that would be generated as a result of this of these fee increases if passed. Is that's for like an entire year?
That's just the increase in revenue above what we currently take in. In a normal year, I think, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about $650,000 in fee revenue we take in about in a typical season. So this would be above that.
So when you say season, that's really the whole year, right?
Yeah, I guess I should be more clear. We do operate year-round. Our day use areas are open year-round. Our camping is seasonal from May 1 to October 1, and we do keep the East Campground, the RV campground in Barton open to the 3rd week of November. So yeah, our fee generation is year-round because we do collect parking fees in the off-season, and we do have some shelter rentals in the off-season.
Okay, so let's just say that the season as you defined it, when you from May to October, are you pretty much at capacity everywhere at these parks?
So for our camping capacity, we have 204 camping sites across Barton, Metzler, and Fryer, and I would say from July through Labor Day, we're 100% capacity on weekends. We're about 40%, 35 to 40% capacity midweek. So as you know, we're going through a Barton Park master plan right now. Our goal is that we can find different ways to increase capacity midweek. But during the peak season, we're 100% full.
Okay, so basically, as you answered my question there, I'd pretty well say that if costs go up, operational costs go up, and you're at capacity in these facilities, your only means of making up for that is by fees and fines, right?
Fees, not fines, but
okay. So how many fines do we actually, just a rough number, how many fines do we actually execute?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'd have to get back to you on that. We used to track that pretty regularly, but we didn't I don't think we got a report last year. So I can get back to you and ask the sheriff's office. They can run a report, and I can tell you exactly. Yeah,
I'm a little, I'm not very comfortable with the discussion around the passes. Like if you lose one, you're SOL, and you need to buy another one. First of all, you may have said it and I missed it, and if so, I'm sorry, but how much is the pass? And follow up to that is that how come it seemed like with computerization, we ought to be able to have 1 or 2, 3 different identifiers per person, whether it's a phone number or whether it's an email address or their name or their full address, that any one of those could be validated pretty easily in a system. So curious as to how many passes we actually execute and then the cost per pass.
So we presently offer a 1-year pass, which is $40 a year, and a 2-year pass, which is $60. And on a typical year, Commissioner, we probably get a request to replace a pass maybe at the most 6 times. It's not a lot. One of our challenges is a lot of people want to buy park passes in the parks, and they come up to a seasonal or to a ranger out in the park. And, taking that data, I don't disagree that technology should make it easier to track all that. But it is cumbersome to do it for the small amount of park passes that we're actually asked to replace. And then it's really on the honor system, because it's very difficult when you're going through the booth with a pass to, there's a number associated with each pass, and then it would require scanning those passes to make sure you're not still using a pass that you said you lost.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see a couple different scenarios. You lose your pass, but if you pull up and you realize you lost your pass that day and you want to go to, let's say, Barton Park, you just pay the 1-day pass, which is cheaper than $40, and you can get in, and then you would seem like you would have an opportunity to then follow up with staff in a normal circumstance, and they can find you in the office and find your name and location and submit a pass plus whatever small cost associated. $40 isn't a lot. It just seems like the policy is rather harsh.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anyone else? Questions?
Mr. Chair, Gruen, we have a comment from Tom Riggs from the BCS team.
Okay, Tom,
Okay, let me allow him. Go ahead, Tom.
mic's off.
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, what Rick was talking about in regards to the booth, there's some additional administrative issue with basically what was happening is a customer would pull up to the booth at Barton, and because of the line of cars to get in, they would not be able to buy a pass at the booth because so much information was needed to be collected. So they would have to be sent to the office. The office is not normally staffed, so someone would have to radio to a ranger in the field and say, we've got a customer who's turning around and coming up to the office to buy a pass. Ranger would have to come up from the day use area, meet them at the office. And the whole process was not customer friendly. It was creating a lot of problems for the 90% or more of our customers who just want to buy a pass and have it. And so by eliminating the need to offer a replacement pass for those very few people who lose it, we are able to reduce the amount of information that's needed to collect so we can sell it out of a bank bag out of your truck. We can sell it out of the booth. It's much more customer focused for getting the passes into the hands of the people. And the not being able to replace it is the flip side of that equation. So I just want to clarify that.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, and just real quick, how many passes a year do we sell?
Hundreds. I don't have that number handy.
Okay, so now those are the 40-year, that's the year-round pass, right?
Yeah.
So we sell hundreds of the year-round pass?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
thank
All
you.
right, any other questions? All right, everyone good with moving forward on this, I assume?
Yes, question.
Yes, Ken.
Yeah, I put the red hand up, but I guess Kevin didn't see it.
Got it. Yeah.
My apologies, Mr. Commissioner.
Nice.
Well, I was prepared to make a motion to approve option 1 with the proviso that we consider implementing the fines as soon as possible, and the fees in 2021 as proposed. And I'm noticing that the Parks Advisory Board had voted unanimously to recommend the proposal in front of us.
They did, Commissioner.
Any other, is there a second? I'll second that. Discussion? Let's vote on it. Kevin, poll us.
All right, Commissioner Savas.
I just think that one part's harsh.
Let's eliminate it. I'm okay with eliminating that.
Okay.
Because I thought the same thing.
Okay, I can accept that as an amendment.
Okay.
So no charge for reissuance.
Well, I mean, I can see someone should pay the day pass at the booth to get in, and if they want to try and get a pass in the mail for future use, they should have that available. I can understand the hiccup that would be on the fly with cars all lined up. That's not the place, and that their only option is to buy a daily pass.
All right.
And
Is
so
that reasonable?
yeah, that's reasonable. Okay. With that, I'm a yes.
Clarification, if I could. So with keeping the replacement still in effect, would we still be able to charge the $5 replacement fee?
Oh, for the pass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
All right, so the motion is to adopt the recommendation with the fines this year and the fees in 2021 or 21-22, and to not charge for a reissue or charge $5 for reissuance of a pass and buy a day pass. Yes, Gary.
Sorry, county council is not here, but I really I'm not sure, and then us, Laura, Rick, or Sarah, if you recall, I don't think you can get this done in time by having the 2 public hearings by May 1st, which is why we couldn't do the fines right away. Did I hear that right? Anyone copy, team here? That I thought was the reason we couldn't do that right away.
My understanding is that, after today, we'd work with council to go through whatever processes we need to go through, Gary, for adoptions, because I think there's different pathways for the fees and the fines to go into effect. And I think at that time too, council would advise us or advise the board on whether there was a willingness to declare an emergency and get them adopted after the second hearing.
Got it.
We got 2 months, so don't we?
Well, May 1st is in like 3 weeks, so 2 weeks.
So Administrator Schmidt, if I may, the fees and fines are usually adopted as part of the budget for the budget hearing in June. And then that's when there's usually a declaration of emergency to put them in effect. So all of these fees and fines are going into the business meeting. Mr. Gruen is correct. The code amendment is a separate portion of it that requires the 2 public hearings.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. I went to a state park this summer, and it's been a while since I went to that same park. It's a state park, and years ago it was $5 a day, and this summer it was $5 a day to get into the park and use the park on the coast. So just want to say, when you did your analysis, Rick, I don't know what the state system looks like, and I don't have any idea how to compare, but when you mentioned the comparables, those were county ran parks?
It was county, metro, state, federal, and private. We did not look at the coast because of some unique differences between coastal facilities and here in the Portland region. So you would be able to enjoy the parks for $6 a day, not $5 a day, except on weekends during the peak season where it'd be $8 a day to enjoy our parks.
Okay.
All right,
I make
Let's-
one point of clarification. So on the code issue, are we striking completely the code for changing the replacement policy and just leaving it as is? Or are we changing the language?
sounds like we're leaving it as is.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so Polis,
All right, Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader, can you hear us, Commissioner Schrader? Skip. Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Chair Bernard.
aye. We didn't hear from Martha, right?
We did not.
Yeah, she's better off logging on through Zoom. All right, motion carries 4-1 abstain, I guess. All right, next. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
much.
much, commissioners. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Gary, what's up next? Your mic.
Thank you. That's hard to keep track of. All right, we'll have a
Yeah.
quick 1 minute break while we shift presenters. Next is H3S, but let's get them in the system here.
Okay.
So, 1 minute stretch break. Next policy session, commissioners, is Health Centers Division, proposed fees for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Rich Swift. I'm sorry, did I say that right? Health Centers Division, proposed fees.
Martha.
2020-21, Rich Swift, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, will present.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is essentially a presentation regarding the health centers fees, and this is pretty much, every year we might do a slight fee increase. We also always maintain our sliding fee schedule based on ability to pay. That has never changed. That's posted, and so what you have at this point are our Health Resources Service Administration requirements in terms of our fee increases. So this is pretty straightforward. I think, at this point, I'd be just open to questions from the board regarding these fees. which at this point we have not adjusted for COVID-19. And in all honesty, we would not anticipate adjusting for COVID-19. I think the big adjustment coming up for the health centers will be an anticipated, unfortunately, a fairly significant anticipated increase in the number of people applying for the Oregon Health Plan. Any questions?
Any questions? Kevin, see anybody?
I do not.
All right.
So Rich, I didn't get a chance to study this part of it, of the work session packet. So there's not a lot here. So are these, so it appears these are brand new fees.
You know, I can't, it doesn't, I don't believe they are.
Because it says current fee amount and the line's blank, and it says that the proposed fee, and so you're going from nothing to something.
Well, it could be that staff may have missed putting something in that, but you know, this is a posted, I mean, regular fee increase for us. So I don't know if I have an answer for your question, Commissioner.
Well, I'm just thinking for, so non-physician phone visit, 21 to 30 minutes, it's $67, for example.
Right. So what you have is, I guess essentially that is an adjustment for COVID-19. So what you have there is the fact that we've got to be able to get into Epic some fees related to the change in how our visits are being conducted. So we are doing very few in-person visits. Most of those visits, if we do see a patient directly in the clinic, is related to a medical emergency where the provider believes that they need to see that individual so they can put hands on them, physical diagnosis. Otherwise, we have essentially taken the majority of our work related to the clinics and we have moved them into telephony and also video conferencing. And so what you have is a reflection of that. We are still continuing with our fee structure as if we were seeing the patient physically, but even though we are not seeing them physically.
Okay. I could see here from reading it that this is being what's billed to the insurance company, not necessarily what the patient is paying for. So thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, most of these would not be paid directly by the patient.
All right. Mr. Chair, you have Commissioner Humbertson.
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, according to the materials that we received from Rich's office, it says right here that there are no fee adjustments to existing fees, but is proposing to add telemedicine fees to the fee schedule. So they are new fees based on a new approach to dealing with clients.
Yes.
But none of them are being charged to the client. They're all being charged to the insurance company.
That is correct.
Got it.
All right.
So
Any other questions? Well, do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Move for approval.
And
Second.
Ken, you're a second?
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? So the motion is to approve the proposed fee structure. Go ahead and poll us.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye, that was an aye.
Okay. Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
That was an aye. Thumbs up.
Chair Bernard.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
So Gary, you're on mute now.
Yep, I don't know what happened there. All right, so Rich is still here. We have one more Public Health Division proposed fees for fiscal year 2020-21. Rich, go ahead, please.
Okay, so this one is an interesting situation, and this is directly related to COVID-19. As everyone can imagine, we are seeing significant disruption in our food delivery industry, whether that be a restaurant, takeout, whatever it may be. And so what we wanted to do was show the board that we do have budget impact related to this. However, at this point, any fee increases, we are delaying at this point because we just do not know what the food industry / restaurant industry in Clackamas County is going to look like. And so we have decided that what we would like to do is essentially propose no fee increases at this point and delay until we have a better sense of what's happening in the economy of the county as it relates to this particular service. And so just wanted
You're asking us not to increase fees.
Yeah, we would not, yes, we are not. We are actually, what we are asking is a delay, and at some point we would come back to the board once we felt like we had an adequate sense of what's happening in the industry. We are seeing a lot of people unable to, they're not sure if they're going to be able to reopen their business, and so we just did not feel at this point it was appropriate for us to be assessing fees, particularly in the increases.
I agree with you.
And Rich, how would you offset those costs then?
We're trying to get a sense of what that would be. We would, at this point, if it's a significant reduction in what we need in terms of inspections, we would probably, at this point, I haven't talked with staff about this, we would probably be looking at some layoffs or furloughs in response to what would be needed. So that's how we would, because this is a fee-based program. And so if the fees aren't there and the revenue is not there, then we would have to accordingly right-size the program in response to what's there.
Okay, do we need a motion on this?
Yes, you do have two commissioners in line though to talk.
Okay,
Yeah, you
go
have
ahead.
Commissioner Humbertson, then Commissioner Fisher.
Gary, thank you for asking my question.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead, since I'm behind, I'll put the motion on the floor to follow staff's recommendation on option 1.
Second, Sonia.
Thank you. So I'm just curious, since this is a fee-based program and I'm imagining we aren't doing many inspections now, is there any effort to sort of right-size our current operations for what under this situation?
We have not done that at this point. I'll be sitting down with staff after this and getting a sense of what FY21 looks like. We've actually been spending, surprisingly, a fair amount of time with those places that have gone to takeout, essentially doing virtual inspections where we've been walking through how they're handling their takeout, how they're providing advice on that. So that they're maintaining social distancing, so they're maintaining infection controls. And if they have a commercial kitchen that is in operation, then we are following through on that.
And then the farmers markets, you will be inspecting all those food stands too.
Yes, we would be. All of those that are open like that, we do have staff. I mean, we're being very careful about employment of staff. In some situations, what they're doing is actually, even with the farmers market, talking through with those vendors to make sure that they are maintaining appropriate infection controls. And there has been some debate about farmers market about whether they should remain open or not. But at this point, those are continuing to function.
All right, so there's been any further questions, comments? Paul?
Yeah, so I'm hearing maybe they're just doing it as to help promote and alleviate concerns, but I'm hearing that some places will take the temperature of their employees before they show up to work and precautions like that. That's not required, right?
No.
Right. Is there anything in light of the COVID thing right now, other than the social distancing, that restaurants now they're doing a lot of takeout are now required to implement?
Mask.
I do not believe so at this point. I mean, they are doing. I mean, the masks are recommended, but we're not doing enforcement on the masks at this point. The only place where you're going to see the enforcement is in a healthcare-based setting.
Yeah, I worked in a couple of food establishments when I was really young, getting through school, and I had to wear a hairnet, for example, way back then.
Not anymore.
And the reasons are obvious. they were then.
That's not part of our packet, so I don't have any comment on that one.
Yeah, but you know, it just seems in light of the COVID thing, which, you know, breathing, sneezing, coughing more than ever, it would just seem unnatural that in a food environment that you would be expected to wear some kind of protection over your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have actually through Clackamas comments, we've received a fair number of inquiries and questions, and you know, Environmental Health Services is definitely open for those types of questions. Their phones are up and running, and so we've been dealing with those on a case-by-case basis in terms of providing inputs to business owners regarding what they should be doing for appropriate infection control. Making recommendations, like for a pizza place, we made recommendations regarding how they should manage their shifts so that they can remain open, but at the same time respect the employees' needs for social distancing, because we want to help the business stay open, but we also want to help the staff be healthy. And so we haven't gotten to the point where, what we've been doing is recommending. It's very difficult because if we start requiring masks, then we have to move into how to enforce. So then we'd have to have an enforcement arm related to that. And so that would mean then staff are deploying to be observing appropriate masking. And so we're not there at this point. And I don't know if we'll ever actually get there, because what you see with the disease curve in Oregon, it's flattening nicely. And so this has been a real balance for us in terms of helping businesses be successful, stay open, but not putting requirements that are going to jeopardize their ability to do that.
Okay, any other questions? Uh-oh, I may have messed up.
My camera started to fade out.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. No further discussion. All those in favor, poll us.
I like that, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Schrader,
Uh-oh,
did we?
the mic's not on. The camera's not on. All right, move on to the others.
Okay, Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries 4-1, and up there, she's back.
Here.
Are you thumbs up or down?
Okay.
All right, unanimously. Thank you.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Gary, we have one more, right?
We have 2 more policy sessions. Would you like to take a 5-minute break?
Wait, I want to ask something first, because I'll forget, and I meant to ask Nancy this. That under an emergency declaration, when we provide grants to small businesses, is there an expectation that the government could reimburse us? If so, how long does it take for the government to pay us back in an emergency like that? I assume that'd be better this time. And what criteria would they have to meet? I just want to ask that, and you can ask Nancy or talk about it later, but I didn't want to forget it again.
Okay. We'll
Thank
check
you.
with Nancy and get back to you.
All right, 5-minute break, you said?
Yes, 5 minutes.
All right, well, there's most of us here. Oh, wait, yeah, it's time, so let's get started.
All right.
There's Martha.
Welcome back, commissioners. Your next policy session is pre-development line of credit from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. We have Stephen McMurtrey to present. Go ahead.
All right, thank you all for having me today, Chair Bernard, commissioners. Here to do a study session on a pre-development line of credit. This is something that the Housing Authority is interested in engaging with, and we have run an RFP at the end of last year and been working through this process. And what I wanted to do is give a little bit of background today, how a pre-development line of credit might work in or work for the Housing Authority as we're redeveloping our portfolio, and then sort of walk you through the process from there. So without any other questions, I'll kind of jump into it. So first off, pre-development lines of credit are an industry best practice. And what they do is they provide really financial capacity to mission-oriented, in this case, affordable housing developments. They provide financial capacity to organizations that can embark on affordable housing development. And what this does is help us keep pace with the cost of pre-development, design, and due diligence expenses that are necessary to move projects to an eventual construction closing. Case in point is Hillside Manor, that I don't have the exact number right now, but its pre-development expenses are well above $200,000, probably more in the lines of $300,000 to $400,000. So it's a tremendous amount of expense to be able to get a project to the construction finishing line. As we build up our development pipeline, access to a pre-development line of credit will allow us to maintain organizational liquidity. The timing of affordable housing development is uncertain. Delays are typical. So if we at the Housing Authority could rely on a pre-development line of credit to take care of our pre-development needs rather than our own balance sheet, then we can avoid some costly situations that might come up because of delays, and it helps us avoid a severe strain on our own organizational financial health. And additionally, as pre-development costs continue to grow from our third parties, if you think about things like surveys and asbestos reports and seismic risk analyses and capital needs assessments, all terms you may have heard us talk about before, as those costs go up year over year along with construction costs, well, we have to find a way to deal with those. And as the Housing Authority, I like to tell people that we have great resources, but not a lot of cash flow. And this is one way to be able to alleviate some of those cash flow problems. Typically, these are issued to mission-driven financial institutions for the furtherance of affordable housing investment. They're short duration loans, typically 3 years with renewal options, or they could be revolving loans that can be reissued upon payback. So if it was a $500,000 line of credit, once we went to construction closing, again, using Hillside Manor as an example, if we had a pre-development line of credit, once we paid it back, we could just roll right into another pre-development source. The increasing cost and complexity of affordable housing has made it imperative that we have these types of flexible funds to cover these costs. And in an effort to move our portfolio forward through the RAD and Section 18 programs, as well as capitalize on the resources set aside for our portfolio through the Metro Affordable Housing Bond, we at HAC issued an RFP in December of 2019 seeking relationships with mission-driven banks and community development financial institutions, also called CDFIs, for the purpose of providing pre-development financing options to the Housing Authority. And the biggest thing is, of primary importance to us is creating that financial capacity as our properties convert from public housing to public-private partnerships. We want to make sure that we aren't overtaxing our day-to-day operational financial capacity or our balance sheet, like I mentioned before. Through our RFP process in December of 2019, we looked for partnerships that would help expand our capacity. In response to our RFP, we only received one formal proposal. We did have conversations with several banks, but only one formal proposal was received. The proposal came from Enterprise Community Loan Fund, or ECLF, through a special partnership with Kaiser Permanente, which is exciting. This partnership between ECLF and Kaiser is specifically to provide opportunities to increase housing supply in conjunction with health action plans for projects where pre-development resources are utilized. There's a couple of things I just wanted to highlight to you in their response that are very favorable terms. First is that the line of credit is full recourse to the borrower and is a master line of credit. So in other words, we could have a couple, 2 or 3 different deals going. For example, Hillside Manor, maybe a Hillside Park, a Gladstone, or something else in our queue could be going. And cumulatively, the line of credit would be up to $750,000. Again, that could be deployed for up to 3 projects simultaneously. It's an initial 36-month term, which can be extended for an additional 12 months beyond that. The line of credit is interest only, and principal be repaid at closing of equity or construction financing. This master line of credit also is unique that any subloans will be unsecured, meaning there is no collateral requirement from the borrower, HAC. We don't have to encumber something in order to demonstrate this. We don't have to put something as a collateral assignment under this loan, which is very favorable and just highlights the mission-driven aspect of Enterprise and Kaiser in this relationship. Lastly, what I don't want to do is spend too much time just sort of reiterating the same thing over again, but I do just want to say that using a line of credit from Enterprise and Kaiser provides us maximum flexibility. This is sort of an industry best practice. We utilize pre-development funds through a line of credit. They provide greater flexibility than a bank because they don't require collateralized assets, like I mentioned, or restrictions on HAC taking on other organizational debt without their permission. So in other words, Enterprise is going to allow us to go out and pursue all of our dealings without having too much influence in the other things that we're doing. The Kaiser partnership and the RX Capital allows Enterprise to provide a lower interest rate than usual, while also providing greater flexibility on loan terms if projects get delayed. And just a couple of things that I think both Kaiser and Enterprise had hoped that they could be a part of this meeting today, but with COVID-19 and other functionality things going on, they did want me to highlight a couple of things that are special about their partnership. So Kaiser's approach to housing includes a variety of mechanisms and is affecting change across the housing system, from ending homelessness to providing investments for affordable housing development and preservation and advocating for policy change. Safe, stable housing is essential to a person's health, and Kaiser Permanente is leading efforts to end homelessness and preserve affordable housing by making impact investments, shaping policy, and catalyzing innovation through partnerships. And the last thing that I'd say is that HAC is already engaged with Kaiser and received funds through the Health Share and the Metro 300, or we're working on that process, that grant right now. That important relationship is already directing resources to invest in health-related outcomes and housing for our most vulnerable populations. If the board agrees that HAC can enter into this pre-development line of credit, Clackamas County can build upon the relationship we've established with Kaiser thus far, while forging a relationship with Enterprise Community Loan Funds, one of the leading community investment lenders in the nation. We'll also have the distinction of being the first organization in Oregon to use this unique and flexible partnership between the two to advance our efforts in meeting our mission and serving the people of Clackamas County.
So, Mr. Chair, you have Administrator Schmidt, and then Commissioner Schrader, I saw a hand.
I wanted to say something real quick. Yeah. Is it a certain base? Let's say they're charging 0. Is it like 1.5? Whatever the. Go ahead.
Correct. Yeah. So the overall it's 5.75%, but interest only. So we're only required to make interest payments. I passed along an amortization schedule to show what our yearly output would be in those interest only payments. You may not have that at the ready, but basically what we'd have is, if we maxed out the loan in year 1, we'd have a total of a little over $40,000 in interest payments we'd have to make before we'd pay that back. So it's very flexible, and it builds over time. We're only paying that interest on the amount of loan that's expended at any given time. I hope that answered your question.
Richard, where'd you get this guy? He is so knowledgeable. It's just amazing. Anyway, it was Gary first, right?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioners, I failed to mention, you are sitting now as the Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County for this item, and your Housing Commissioner, Ann, has joined the meeting. That's the Ann who you see on the screen. So Ann, you're on mute, but welcome, Ann. Thank you for being at our meeting today. That's all. Thank you.
And who is next?
Commissioner Schrader, did you have your hand for anything? No? Okay.
No. All right. Any other questions or comments? Sounds like a great thing to do. I mean, I actually have a similar thing, but it's whatever the base federal rate plus 1.5% interest only. Mm-hmm. But it's not for 700,000.
750.
750. All right. So is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve option 1.
Is there a second? All right, I'll second it. Any further discussion? Whatever your name is, Kevin, please poll the commission. Your mic's not on, Kevin.
First time. Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Stavis,
Aye, good work, Stephen.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you
Wait,
very
wait, you
much.
forgot to poll. You forgot one more person to poll.
Oh,
Oh,
Commissioner Mitchell.
Ann.
Commissioner Ann.
Yes, please, third. Yes, up. Thumbs up.
All right, thank you, Ann. Thank you, Richard, for reminding us.
Sure.
Anyway, very good
Stephen.
job.
Stephen, you look like you're 20 years old.
I'm actually only 19, Commissioner, but thank you.
I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Gary?
You have one more policy session today, commissioners. You are now sitting again as the Board of County Commissioners. This is a search and rescue issues update that you had requested. We have the team from County Council presenting, and Finance, and maybe Human Resources. Well, yeah, here we are. The whole team's here. So I'll let Stephen Madkour begin, and then introduce your team as appropriate.
So Ann, you're okay to log off now. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hello.
We're here. We also have Eric Machado, our risk manager. We have Elizabeth Comfort from Finance. We're supposed to have Seco and Sean Lilligren from County Council as well. This is a revisit of the search and rescue issue that the board had kind of grappled with previously. We invited the sheriff's office to attend, and they declined. They did have some input into the staff report that was finalized and circulated to you as well. They offered a couple lines in there. The bottom line is that, as you know, as a result of the Jenkins lawsuit, the sheriff has assumed a more proactive role in search and rescue operations. And what seems to have happened was that he has selected some volunteer groups as being as wanting to continue with utilizing them, and he might have not selected other ones. And the concern was, as expressed to me, or as I understand it to be, is that with the sheriff assuming those responsibilities, that it might increase the cost to the sheriff's office. It might increase risk and liability to the county, and all at the expense of these volunteer groups, which have been volunteering primarily on Mount Hood for a number of years. And so with that, there's no doubt that the sheriff has statutory authority for all search and rescue within the county. And my understanding is when the, what was it he had? He had an MOU with some search and rescue volunteer groups that came to this board because it had search and rescue operations outside of the county. And so I had it come to the board saying that this is going to increase the sheriff's risk and the county's risk, so it needed board approval. And the board did not approve that search and rescue MOU. And my understanding, even though I haven't seen it yet, my understanding is that the sheriff has withdrawn that provision of out-of-county approval and operations for these organizations, that he's only authorizing it in county, and as such, does not require board approval. I also understand that as a result of some of the attention that was brought on by the tension between search and rescue and the sheriff's office, that the sheriff's office has reached a new agreement with, I believe it's Portland Mountain Rescue. I saw a photograph with people shaking hands. I haven't seen anything in writing regarding that arrangement. So that essentially is what I know about the status of search and rescue operations and the relationship between the sheriff's office and these various volunteer organizations. And I'm not entirely sure if Sean or Scott in my office have anything in addition to offer in terms of the status of that. but we're here to answer any questions that the board might have with respect to that topic.
All right, Mr. Chair, you have Commissioner Savas and Stephen. I'm keeping an eye out for Sean and Scott.
Thanks.
Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone at least what my concerns were, and so I never has this been any effort to overstep the sheriff's responsibility and role under Section 404 of the Oregon Administrative Rules or revised statutes. However, the issue about risk for the county, whether or not the Board of County Commissioners approves out-of-county operations, is not the point. What really is that under this role, our responsibilities or risk increased by the new approach put into place. And in the report that was cited a couple months ago that former Under Sheriff Ellington had prepared, there were examples of Multnomah County and Deschutes County. Deschutes County is one that seemed to be referenced by the CCSO frequently in their communications. And in there, I think in the very first page or paragraph, there's a reference to a $1.5 million operating expense for the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. And we have, a lot more activity in Clackamas County, not just on the mountain, but, around the county for search and rescue. And a lot of people have estimated that it would be under that particular program as originally posted on the sheriff's website, how that would work, and through reading into the MOUs and how that's been implemented, that it would be much higher than 1.5 million. And it would be additional costs that we had not ever seen before. And I understand that the website posting on CCSO's page regarding search and rescue has changed since then. And now it's probably more unclear than ever as to really how that's going to be implemented. So I don't have any information. It's unfortunate that there isn't anyone from the sheriff's office whatsoever to be here and participate today. I can see how one or two people may be busy, but absent that, my concern is back to the cost and to risk. That's been my point all along, and that's where we play a role and bear a role. So if the model is currently to send and supervise out of county operations that have to go through the sheriff's office, because that was a configuration before. So I'll back up to make this really clear to anyone that's listening. I mean, as it was proposed before, if Columbia County, for example, had a call out and they needed one of those organizations, that they would have to go through Clackamas County first, and then that would be conveyed to the search and rescue operations, and then they would send those folks out with a CCSO lieutenant or sergeant or someone supervising that. That wasn't the case before. This time last year, those volunteers were called out by Columbia County in this example, for example, and they would supervise the search and rescue volunteers. Well, we are in Region 2 or whatever it is, and there's 9 counties involved in that, and so we've spent extra resources and time and money to do that, beginning of late or fall of last year, and I presume maybe that's still carrying on today. I don't know. And so there's risk and there's cost, and I don't know how we get our arms around that, but we're responsible for both. I mean,
Paul, I think you said it earlier today, how we control the sheriff's office's line items, and I think this is one line we should expect to see in this budget.
Well, yeah, that applies to all departments, yes, as we talked about budget earlier today. But how does that get to the risk part? And I know Eric is online. Is Eric with us?
I am here.
Yeah, Eric, do you have any, I've always wanted to hear from you on this topic. And I'm very concerned about this. And when I had talked to one other sheriff's organization in Oregon. I'll remain nameless. When I described the model that was to be implemented, or was being implemented, the response I got back was, we moved away from that model decades ago. It didn't work.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same concerns that you all are feeling as far as the risk liability piece. I'm not one that wants to take on more liability for our operations without a way, at least without a way to mitigate it in some respect, whether that's through insurance, through risk mitigation strategies around the operation, through contracts, whatever. But in this situation, I don't think we know enough about how they want to set it up exactly to truly make a strong evaluation. My kind of overriding concerns would be around, from a pure liability standpoint, if we bring this piece in-house or under some sort of oversight umbrella, that gives us a much higher duty of care as far as the search and rescue missions go than we currently have. Right now it's more of a volunteer type organization and operation, and it's up to those groups to do that. And if we controlled it more, we just have a higher duty of care.
Commissioner Humberton.
Thank you. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested in assuming any additional liability. I'm not interested in increasing the sheriff's budget in order for him to be able to take over something that's been handled by volunteers for 20 years, and there's 400 of those volunteers. So financially, I'm not willing to do that. If there is no other way to prevent the sheriff from taking it over, and he has the right to do so, then the insurance to cover our liability should come out of his current budget, in my opinion. But the county shouldn't have to bear any expense for something like this when it's absolutely not necessary.
Is there a way to calculate the cost?
Strictly from an organizational perspective, adding in that piece of liability wouldn't be simple. We might be able to do an allocation with an actuary to determine some costs, some additional costs, I should say. But if you spread it out amongst everything, it's probably not significant. But again, it's hard to evaluate it without really knowing what we're looking at. And
sounds like $1 million to me.
We can pass it right along to the sheriff's department then, right?
Yeah, I just want to add. I mean, I think it's imperative that we have good relationships with all of our departments, and especially those that are elected, and have their departments to run. And we certainly have, regardless what sheriff's office is in Oregon, it doesn't really matter. It's not their fault, but there's always going to be a higher level of risk and lawsuits in law enforcement. That's just the nature of that type of work. We need to do our best to mitigate that and limit that exposure as best we can. We have that responsibility to our taxpayers, our constituents. It's just unfortunate there's not clarity as far as how or someone here today to offer that clarity from the sheriff's office. But we can do the budgetary aspects. I might ask Mr. Madkour with regard to the comment about liability, how we limit that, or maybe it's Commissioner Humberston's comment. Is there a way to put that back in the financial lap, so to speak, of the sheriff's office? I mean, is a way to do that legally? Because currently the legal structure is the county pays.
Correct, the county pays. Even if you were to buy insurance, obtain insurance for it, the county would be paying. I do support the sheriff's office taking a more primary role in search and rescue, as is their statutory duty and obligation. I think the manner in which it was rolled out is the issue that's being is more troubling to folks. I think it's quite clear that there needs to be protocols and a chain of communication with these volunteer groups, and that was kind of lacking previously. So our office does support it. We think that is best practice. I think it's the manner in which the sheriff rolled out the excluding or just continuing using some of these volunteer organizations. I think that's the trouble spot. But either way, if there's problems on search and rescue, it's going to be a county responsibility.
Yeah, I think that was in Ellington's report, or one of the CCSO documents. It was clearly spelled out that Clackamas County Legal Office, Counsel's Office, had identified that as a risk and not a recommendation. And yet, I think you might have been not accurately cited in some of the communications as supporting this. So I know it kind of put us at odds, but
I blame it all on Scott Sika. He is the master behind the scenes, pulling all the strings.
Commissioner Schrader.
So I know we're discussing this again, but my understanding was that the sheriff is not pursuing this. So why are we discussing it right now?
He is pursuing it.
He's still
just not doing the outside one.
So he's doing. So explain that to me. He's doing it internally?
Yes, within the county. He's not doing that outside the county, which reduces our liability.
Okay.
But internally, it increases our liability for what.
So internally, he still wants to run SARS without volunteers.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
You betcha. So, I mean, so Stephen, you're basically agreeing that he should do this within the county. It's just the process he went through to do it.
Well, we're in agreement, and our recommendation was, as a result of the what we discovered during the Jenkins case, was that there needs to be tighter protocols with the sheriff's office and all search and rescue volunteers. The fact that the sheriff's office then made a policy decision to select some volunteers that it wanted to work with and others it no longer wanted to work with. The fact that it assumed dispatch, like Commissioner Savas pointed out, we have been told by some of these organizations that other counties have requested their assistance, and the sheriff's office has said, no, we can't aid you. And then the other counties would contact the volunteer groups directly, and they would say, you have to go through the sheriff, and they would respond, we tried, and they said you were unavailable. So it leads me to believe that the sheriff's office is not conveying some of those requests for assistance to the actual volunteer organizations. And I've gotten that information from the attorneys from one of these organizations. So yes, the sheriff is making a policy decision, but it's in line with some of our recommendations, but it goes beyond our recommendations as well.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to clarify, Jim. So it's not that we have the last we heard is just like Mr. Madkour cited, that the dispatching for out-of-county work is still happening the way that was troublesome and I think puts the county at greater risk. So we have no reason to think that hasn't changed. The only thing that he's changed is his office is authorizing it. He's not asking the county commissioners to authorize it. So that one section was removed, but the activity is really the issue. The activity of how they're dispatched for out-of-county work and putting us in the immediate line of communication for contact, which results in potential delays and certainly more risk, is really the primary issue. That's really what happened in the Jenkins case. The Jenkins case was a lack of communication. wasn't a failure of the search and rescue people.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Well,
Humbertson?
go ahead. Who?
Commissioner Humbertson.
Yeah.
So with respect to out of county and that liability, under the system, the way it was working, if they went out of county, the county that they went to assumed the liability. If they bring these folks under the sheriff's department, then when they go out of county, we're assuming the liability even though they're out of county. And that's one of the reasons that I don't support any changes in what we're doing, quite frankly. I don't think we need to be assuming the liability for what happens out of our county. They're volunteers. If they choose to go and they're covered by the county they go to, that should be sufficient. And if their volunteers come here, we cover their volunteers. So again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm not interested in increasing the sheriff's budget to cover those costs. We may not administratively be able to prevent him from doing what he chooses to do because of his statutory position, and I understand that, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to increase the budget. I still say his primary responsibilities are running the jail and boots on the ground.
Mr. Chair, back to Commissioner Savas.
So I guess the question, I don't know who can answer it, but the question may be is that, so let's just say that there's another case and we have liability for something that falls under our concerns currently, and let's just say the lawsuit's $1 million, and that comes out of our risk fund. Okay, is there a mechanism where we can just simply make that a budgetary adjustment that gets deducted from the sheriff's budget? Was a suggestion that Jim was making? Is there a means of really doing that? Is that fair, or is that a method or a system?
I can just weigh in from the risk fund side. I mean, I think we've discussed this in other cases with the sheriff's department that we were potentially going to settle. Maybe Elizabeth can weigh in more from the budget finance side, but theoretically we could do that and not charge the risk fund. The only thing I would say on and I talked to a couple people about the inter-county or if they went out of county, and one option, and maybe Stephen and his group can weigh in, is if we had MOUs with the other counties around that, agreements with those counties that would protect us if something were to go wrong, so to speak, a contract with the county. If that would help.
An MOU would be available. It's not ironclad. We would still probably get sued, but we would look to the other county to assume the primary responsibility for it.
So what count? Those are what, 36 counties or?
Yes.
2,000.
Well, the region that we're in I think it's called Region 2, and there's 9 counties in Region 2 that are subject to this procedure right now.
So why don't we send them all letters and ask to have an MOU that any request for emergency rescue services to the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department would require an MOU, which would put the risk in their hands.
So we would essentially, Jim, ask for what's the legal term if we get liability waived, that we be somehow insulated?
Indemnification?
Yep.
Indemnify the county?
You can try that. It doesn't really work, but it's worth it. So does that seem like an idea? Stephen, what do you think?
It certainly is an option. I think it would have to come from the sheriff himself or herself, depending upon what happens at this next election. They are still statutorily responsible for search and rescue in the county, and any MOU would be through the sheriff's office, with the board signing off on it. But I do think that the sheriff has a role in this, and that's why we're kind of having this conversation in the vacuum of sorts, because they're not here. I think there is an opportunity to, and we've talked about it in the past, to have a department that did not follow the advice of council and or the board or county administration's direction. If there is a damages award or a settlement, that those dollars do come from that department's budget. And we've talked about that in the past, and we've actually used that in the past in some employment claims. So that's an item of potential conversation, but I think, again, I think a lot of the relationship building should come from the sheriff's office, whether it's with search and rescue groups or with other counties. It certainly would aid us all if that were true, if they were to take the lead on that.
Are we beating a dead horse right now? It seems like we are.
I have a question though. Eric, what are the bottles in your background?
These?
Yeah.
My wife's essential oil collection.
Aha.
All right, so.
Commissioner Humbertson?
I was just wondering what the feasibility is to essentially sit on this and wait until the election has occurred. There's a new sheriff, get the new sheriff and SARS team representatives together along with us and see if something rational can be worked out.
We're not going to assign it anyway, so what difference? Let's see if we can work it out with the new sheriff.
Yeah.
So there's yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but it sounds to me like what if I heard everyone, not everyone, but I heard at least Ken say and Jim say today that we don't want to absorb the financial cost of that for operational stuff and so forth. So, you know, maybe direction to our staff, budgeting staff or finance staff is number one, you know, create a budget with line item detail that allows us to do just that. And perhaps maybe a communication, I might recommend a communication from the county, from the BCC to the sheriff himself, asking him to contact the other counties for a document or something that indemnifies a county for that kind of operation.
Yeah. Not a bad idea.
Okay, so do we need, Gary, what would you need to implement either of those two?
Well, the line item is difficult. Are you saying for the sheriff only or for every county department? That's not how we budget now. We're tying our budgets to performance clackamas, which are based on the strategic results of each department. So it's complicated what you're asking. I need time to work with staff on looking at that. And then as far as the letter, that's up to you commissioners if you want to ask the sheriff, but he doesn't have to do it.
Why don't we just sit on it if we can?
We already are.
Yeah.
I think we need to wait for a new sheriff.
When we say that, are we talking about the budget piece or are we talking about the letter piece?
All of the above.
Well, you know, I
don't think we can
first
afford
off,
that.
I don't want to go through an entire budget process line by line by line. As far as the sheriff, supposedly, I've never really seen, he has a budget that's supposedly pretty well defined. I don't know if that's true or not. And we could take a look at that and look at where we can take cuts to accommodate the additional expense that he's proposing, which is, I don't know, $1 million. But like I said, we're beating a dead horse right now, so how long are we going to beat it?
Well, I do want to get, I mean, I don't want to beat that part, but I do want to get back to Gary's question. When we talked about controlling budgets, and Jim, you sat in that audit committee meeting as I did. Other counties do their budgeting with a little bit more detail, not micromanaging to that level of line by line for that level of detail. But there's different levels of detail. It's not black and white. But I think we almost have certainly a situation right now with this crisis to do more detailed budgets, and that's not just one department. So I don't know, I was confused, Gary. I don't know why we couldn't do an MFR type budget and have detail as well, at least another level of detail. Elizabeth, can you chime in on that, please?
Oh, wait a second. Well, this is a different subject, and I don't think it's appropriate to have this discussion right now. Let's have this in work session. This is a work session, but at a different time. It's not scheduled.
The budget committee meets next Wednesday, and that's the time you can have this conversation.
Let's do that then. I'm tired of sitting in front of this screen.
Yeah, well, your orange isn't really growing on me, Jim. But maybe I can talk offline to Gary and Elizabeth on that question. So I would like an answer before next week.
Yep. Well, I'm not interested in going line by line. I think the performance is how you do it, and we'll see a performance budget, which I'm not that familiar with. So I don't know how we do this without doing one-on-ones, but I've been doing budgets for 20 years in government, and every time it goes up and down, how much detail people want. Pretty soon it's a one sheet of paper or 5,000. Somewhere in between, we've got to find a solution that satisfies most of us. Anyway, is that the last work session, Gary?
This is it for today, yes.
All right. Well, then I think we can adjourn.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. We will see you on Thursday.
Thank you.